A member of the League of German Girls, attacked for her German ancestry and the fact that the German Kaiser was her grandfather. Was Frederica of Hanover Greece's most hated Queen Consort? Born on April 18, 1917, as the only daughter of Ernest Augustus, the Duke of Brunswick, and Princess Victoria Louise. Through her mother, Frederica, or Freddie as she was called within the family, was the granddaughter of Kaiser Wilhelm II. Frederica's full name was Frederica Louise Thyra Victoria Margaret Sophie Olga Cecilia Isabella Christa. She was born a princess of Hanover, Brunswick-Lüneburg, and Great Britain and Ireland. The latter title she received through her father, who was a descendant of the British royal family. However, Frederica did not hold that title for too long. You see, she was born towards the end of the First World War. Over in Britain, anti-German sentiment was rising, and her far relative, King George V, decided to erase any ties to his German roots. As a consequence, German royals were stripped of their British titles and dukedoms. When Frederica was only 1.5 years old, the First World War came to an end. In the aftermath of the warfare, her father and grandfather were forced to abdicate their thrones. Frederica and her brothers grew up in Blankenburg and Gmunden, Austria. She studied in England and Florence. Just like her parents, Frederica as well was a supporter of Nazism. She was a member of the League of German Girls, a branch of the Hitler Youth. In the Nazi press, she was praised for her loyalty towards the regime and her involvement in the Reich labor service, which she fulfilled like every other ordinary German girl. The Reich Labor Service, also called RAD, was a paramilitary organization within the Nazi regime to help decrease unemployment rates and push the economy. In 1935, the by then 18-year-old Frederica joined her mother in a meeting with Adolf Hitler. There she met other higher-ranking Nazis like Joseph Goebbels, Joachim von Ribbentrop, and Winifred Wagner. Hitler had plans to establish a closer connection to the British royal family. As such, he asked Frederica's parents to arrange a marriage to Edward, the Prince of Wales. Her parents were shocked by this request, as her mother, Victoria Louise herself, was once considered as a bride for the future king, and him being 23 years Frederica's senior. Her parents declined as they did not want to put any pressure on their only daughter. During the summer of 1936, Prince Paul of Greece was attending the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin. On this occasion, he proposed to Frederica and she accepted. Frederica was closely related to Paul through both of her parents' sides. She had met Paul before while studying in Florence. Their engagement was officially announced in September 1937. According to a source, Frederica assured her friends that she would continue to support the Nazi regime and its ideology in her new home country. This most likely laid the foundation for her unpopularity in Greece. The wedding followed on January 9, 1938 in Athens. Upon her marriage, she became the hereditary princess of Greece. Her husband Paul was the heir presumptive to the Greek throne, as his elder brother George was childless. After their wedding, the newlywed couple moved into a villa in Psychiko. 10 months later, their first child, Sophia, was born. 1.5 years later, their second child, Constantine, followed. Soon after the Second World War broke out. At this time, Frederica was officially still a part of the League of German Girls back home. Despite the promise she made before her marriage, she turned against the German Reich and thought of Greece possibly joining the Axis powers as contradictory to Greek interests. In April 1941, the Greek royal family had to be evacuated to Crete in a Sunderland flying boat. Shortly after, the island was a target of attacks by the German forces. Eventually, most of the Greek royal family found themselves in exile in South Africa. Here, Frederica gave birth to her last child, Princess Irene, in 1942. The family later relocated to Egypt, where they stayed until after the war. In 1946, Frederica's brother-in-law was restored to the throne, and the family was able to return to their villa in Greece. On April 1st, 1947, George II died and Paul became king of the Hellenists. As such, Frederica became Queen Consort of Greece. As queen, Frederica founded the Queen's Camps or Child Cities. The foundation enabled education for roughly 20,000 children and was financed by taxes. Despite her social work, Frederica became a target to frequent attacks due to her German ancestry. The fact that her grandfather was the Kaiser and her brothers were SS members was constantly brought up. While she was attending the wedding of her first cousin Prince Philip to the then Princess Elizabeth in November 1947, Winston Churchill brought up the topic once again. She replied by acknowledging the fact that she was also a descendant of Queen Victoria and that her father would be the British king if the country had followed Salic law. During the same time, civil war was raging back home in Greece. The warfare only ended in 1949, after which the king and queen tried to strengthen the monarchy by paying official state visits. The hatred against Frederica, however, would remain. Her husband, on the other hand, was fairly popular in Greece. But it was not only her German background for which she was hated, it was also Frederica's interference in politics. She was described as undemocratic and constantly had clashes with the government. It was said that Frederica, who was 5'2", overtowered her 6'2" tall husband. By this time, Frederica was the most hated person in Greece. In 1962, Frederica's eldest daughter married Juan Carlos of Spain, who would later become King of Spain. 2 years later, her husband died of cancer and her son Constantine became king. The then Prime Minister suggested that she move to Austria and receive a dowry of 400,000 mark yearly. She refused and decided to continue to interfere in politics. When the new king, Constantine II, married Princess Anne-Marie of Denmark in September of that same year, Frederica officially stepped back from most of her public duties. She, however, remained a controversial figure and was said to still be the real power behind the throne. Frederica moved to the countryside where she lived a quiet life, only attending family events. In early 1967, King Constantine II clashed with Prime Minister George Papandreou. This event led to a military coup and a military dictatorship. Initially collaborating with the new regime, the royal family eventually found themselves fleeing their country by the end of 1967. The junta took over control of Greece. However, it would take 6 more years until the monarchy was officially abolished. The military dictatorship was only short-lived and ended in 1974. Constantine campaigned from outside of the country to restore the monarchy. He admitted errors and promised to not let his mother interfere in politics. Despite this, over 2/3 of the population voted for a democratic republic. Frederica lived with her daughter Sofia in Spain in the meantime. There, Frederica died on February 6, 1982, of heart failure following an eyelid surgery. She was interred at Tatoi in Greece next to her husband Paul. Her family was only allowed to enter Greece for the funeral and had to leave immediately after the service.